This field trip takes elementary students to Port Jefferson History and Nature Center to see how a native plant habitat supports the life cycles of pollinators, such as the monarch butterfly. This learning activity supports grades 3rd, 4th, and 5th Science, Texas Essential Knowledge Skills, or TEKS alignments. Port Jefferson History and Nature Center is a 35-acre complex that sits along the Big Cypress Bayou waterfront in Jefferson, Texas. Today, we will be in the center section. This serves the community as an urban wildscape habitat. A wildscape habitat is composed of native plants within a larger ecosystem. An urban wildscape is a type of wildscape that contains man-made features, like concrete and sidewalks, and it is located within a city or a town. You may not often notice, but native plants are all around us. They are adapted to the soils and to the weather of this region. Using native plants instead of plants from other regions saves on water, reduces gardening costs, and they provide food and shelter that helps pollinating insects to survive. Here in our park, there are a few native plants that make the park a good wildlife habitat for pollinators. This reconstructed habitat is part of a larger ecosystem of the Big Cypress Bayou. These purple flowers pictured here are a type of mint. They are commonly referred to as bee balm. This plant is a great nectar source for both butterflies and hummingbirds, and it's very pretty. The bee balm pictured here is part of a larger population of bee balm in the park. The deep red trumpeted-shaped flowers are from a small shrub. It's commonly called the coral bean. The flowers are shaped perfectly for a hummingbird's long, slender tongue and are a great source of nectar for this small bird. The coral bean plant here is part of the larger population of coral bean plants located in the park. The beans produced by this plant were used by native peoples in ceremonies and is also called by the names Cherokee bean, cardinal spear, and cardinal flower. A word of caution, however, the beans are toxic to people, so don't touch the beans, which tend to form after pollination occurs on the flower. The lighter, red trumpet-shaped flowers that are next to the coral bean are from a plant known as the standing cypress, which can get upwards of 6 feet tall in the park. It is a great nectar plant for all pollinators that have long, slender, straw-like proboscis. Hummingbirds love it, and so do butterflies. It's also known as flame flower because at a distance, a dense population looks like fire on the landscape. Another very pretty flower that's also blooming today is a favorite source of nectar for the honeybee. This beauty is also known as purple coneflower. Native peoples used this plant for many traditional medicines, and it is still available today in health food stores, although it's better known there as echinacea, which is the formal or Latin name of the plant. This plant is a type of daisy, and it's in the aster family of plants known as composite flowers. They are called composites because they're actually composed of many, many, many small flowers. Each petal, in fact, represents a complete flower, and it eventually will produce its own seed. Together, all of these different types of plants are examples of the native plants that make up the community in the park. When you come to the park in person, you will see all the diversity and how many populations make up our native plant community in our urban wildscape. Certified by the National Wildlife Foundation as a wildlife habitat and certified by the Xerces Society for Insect Conservation as a pollinator habitat, our park contains many plants that are very useful to insects, like the monarch butterfly. These plants provide nurseries for the butterfly to lay their eggs and food for their larvae. For the monarch butterfly, milkweeds are the only food source that they use. When the plant serves as a food source for an insect, it's called a host plant. Milkweeds provide nectar for the adult monarch, as well as home and food for the egg and larvae. Orange milkweed, or butterfly weed, is a monarch favorite. In this picture here, you can see a female monarch butterfly as she collects sugary nectar from an orange milkweed bloom. She may have laid eggs during that visit to this plant. Monarch eggs are tiny, and it makes them very hard to see. Sometimes they're laid on the underside of the leaves. Pictured here is a grouping of monarch eggs on the underside of the leaf of an orange milkweed. If you look very closely, a small monarch caterpillar, which is known as a larvae, can also be seen in the picture. In this next photograph, it is a single monarch butterfly egg. The dark dot in the lower right side of the picture is an egg of another insect, and both of these are laid on the underside of the leaf. When the eggs hatch, the caterpillars emerge. These larvae begin to eat milkweed leaves and the blooms almost immediately and quickly grow into a large size. Milkweed plants contain a chemical that makes the larvae and the adult monarch taste bad to other animals that might want to eat them. Predators, like birds, learn to avoid eating the monarch due to the bad taste of the butterfly, which it acquires from eating the leaves of the milkweed host plant. This picture shows a monarch larvae on a milkweed species known as the common milkweed. The characteristic of tasting bad to a predator has long existed enough for another species of butterfly, the Visceroy, to mimic the monarch's appearance and have some protection from its own predators as a result. Can you tell the difference between the Visceroy and the monarch butterfly? Well, the Visceroy is the one pictured here on the bottom. The difference is the Visceroys contain parallel veins in their hind wings, while monarchs have no parallel veins. The Visceroy prefers to eat willow and cottonwood as their host plant. These trees provide a different chemical to that caterpillar, which also makes them taste bitter, and it does upset the stomach of their predator. All butterflies go through what is known as complete metamorphosis before they complete their life cycle. Complete metamorphosis refers to an insect that goes through distinct life cycle changes, from the egg to the larvae to the pupa to the adult form. Another eye-catching flower, because of its bright color, is called gayfeather or blazing star. The formal Latin name of the plant genus is Liatris, and this is also another common name for these plants. It is prized for its ability to attract all kinds of pollinating insects. Our picture here shows a small skipper butterfly drinking nectar in early summer. This behavior among butterflies is also referred to as nectaring. The park contains a beautiful springtime roadside favorite called golden wave Coreopsis. It is also known as tick seed because the seeds look a lot like ticks. There are several different kinds or species of Coreopsis. This one pictured with the bright red center is known as the plains Coreopsis. It blooms later in the growing season. Coreopsis' bright colors attract the pollinators. The visiting insects provide pollinating services to the flowers by transferring pollen from one flower to the next, while they feed on the nectar. Pictured here, you can see a Gulf fritillary butterfly feeding on another native yellow flowering plant, which is known as a lantana. This plant is a small shrub that is being pollinated by the butterfly as it visits the plant for its nectar. The Natchez River mallow is one of the rarest plants in East Texas. Through a partnership with Dr. Creech at Stephen F. Austin State University, here at Port Jefferson History and Nature Center, we have the largest known colony of Natchez River rose mallow in the entire world. The flower grows in wetland areas exposed to open sun. It likes standing water for part of its growing season, and it's found in the floodplains of rivers or adjacent to ponds, sloughs, and oxbows. Unfortunately, habitat loss and degradation have reduced its habitat in the Natchez River bottom to just a few small areas that support no more than a few hundred plants. Scientists are studying a species of wasp that appears to live on and pollinate this plant. It could be a new species that's using this threatened plant as its home. So when you come to the park, Be on the lookout for this plant and take special note and make sure you see if you can spot that special wasp. If you do, be sure to get a picture of it, because you never know. You could be the one that helps to discover a new species. Could the wasp in this picture be that special one? You'll need to look very closely in order to find it. On our virtual field trip today, we have visited an urban wildscape called Port Jefferson History and Nature Center. We have learned that native plantings can be arranged into a wildlife habitat that supports pollinators of many types. We now know plants that are adapted to the conditions of their surroundings have a much better chance of surviving because they're adapted for the environment. That means they require less maintenance, less watering, and most of them will come back year after year after year. We know that individual plants of the same type make up populations of a certain species, and that these populations combine to form communities. Plant communities help to define the type and the quality of the habitat that you might be examining. We also learn that pollinators, like the hummingbird, have special adaptive traits that allow them to drink nectar from long trumpet-shaped flowers. Each type or species of flower has a different characteristic that attract a different type of pollinator. We have learned that some insects have a favorite plant, and these plants provide shelter for raising their offspring, and some, like the orange milkweed, also provide protection to their larvae and adults from predators. We found that certain species of insects can also co-evolve using adaptations like mimicry, so that they too can benefit from survival. Our virtual tour has highlighted the plight of the Natchez River rose mallow, which is a critically threatened species. We have demonstrated how the park provides habitat for pollinators for the preservation and restoration of this plant. Scientific study may soon reveal that specialized wasps use this plant exclusively as both habitat and host for nectar resources and for raising their offspring. Today, we have shown that an urban wildscape is a diverse habitat of native plantings that provides food and shelter for insects and other wildlife that are located within towns and cities. If a quality source of water is available nearby, such habitat can bring joy to people, support wildlife, and provide green spaces for communities for many years to come. For more information about this virtual tour of Port Jefferson History and Nature Center, and to find out more about the Texas Essential Knowledge, Skills, or TEKS for this program, please visit www.askthescientist.org.